Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about what's going on in a nutshell, okay? And why people aren't smart enough to obey God through me. Well, first let's start with, the obvious thing I've proven over the years, that the government has conceded my point in terms of acknowledging that I'm right and that they're wrong. And that is that nobody understands why we're here but the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order, and it's only me, and after I'm gone, no one will understand why I'm here. So they're persecuting me, why anyone's here, right? So they're persecuting me because using their scientific scale, for example, they're not fully evolved in a sense, but that's not really, it's not that simple, right? It has to do with God's plan, right? They're not set apart to be equal to the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. And so a lot of white Jews and LGBT people all throughout history, they did what's called idolatry, where they pretend that they're superior to everyone else because they have an inferiority complex, okay? And they started really relying on technology and science, and we all know that that's kind of laughable, right? We look at how cars are designed, look at how the various equipment is designed, how it fails all the time. I remember this one person told me that, the older technology was better because the new stuff breaks down, and so on and so forth. So it for many reasons, it's stupid to rely on technology or to use that as the scale of evolution and what have you. Now, again, I don't so much care who's more evolved than who, but this is part of the story. So now let's look at the evidence here as to why we're here, okay? Now, one needs to only take a quick glance at nature, and as they're trying to figure out why we're here, right? There's different animals in nature that are, at war with each other, if you will. They're eating each other. They're fighting with each other. Some are more pronounced than others, okay? It's like the sun in the sky. God left the evidence in a way that was very obvious, okay? And so it is a martial art kind of construct where if you don't get to righteousness, you're like a beta, right? You're like a little girl that needs to be raised by her father specifically, right? Not just her mother, but her father specifically as the determinant, right? The sun and the day, right? You kind of sleep through the messages that your mother gives you. Think about the moon as a symbol of the female, and it's the father, right? And there's a reason why you walk on the earth. Now, again, I don't, have a problem with the earth per se, but the message is, and this is, it's more like a jigsaw quite often, but it has to do with righteousness and justice, right? When you think clearly, you're going to be moral, okay? So when you look at this thing, and we look at what's happened here, we see how females have betrayed me, and so on and so forth. I think that it's not a coincidence that we walk on the earth where the sun is above us, right? It's beneath our feet, right? And the moon is at night, okay? So people, when they throw a fit, it doesn't make it better, right? So think about Marilyn Manson. If he throws a fit and says, "No, I want him," that he wants me to pretend that he's better or something, does that make him better or worse? It makes him worse, right? It also fucks with his head, right? He starts going more and more crazy. So the more they sabotage me, the more they kind of try to use money and different methods to try to get me to do their will, the lower they sink, and relative to them, the higher I'm exalted, okay? But this is my nature to say no to them anyway, right? When a bird flies for a long time, does it become greater? Yes and no, right? It becomes great at a certain rate if it's still evolving, but they're not, they're exalted me relative to them, and I'm God's son, and what more can I want than that? Okay, so let's look at some of the more damning evidence here. I talked about how martial artists do martial arts, and they had to purify water. They had to drink more water than most people, and so therefore they had to really make sure that they had the water purity down to a science. And as it was the most demanding exercise, it helps them to think in a way that's more sharp than everyone else. Okay, now when we look at the rhinoceros, right, the rhino, we look at the elephant, right, we look at the impala, right. There's different horns here, okay? These things don't exist for no reason. They exist because they're martial art, they're breadcrumbs for the Royal African Falcon martial arts. And again, part of why it's African is where are most of the animals, right? You think about Africa, you think most of the animals, right? In terms of the diversity, right, where life comes from, right? The sun gives life. Africa received life the most. That's what comes to mind, and it's very believable, right? So two things matter here: where most of the life is, right, and where you perceive it to be, because that's also part of the message from God, is saying what's going on here. Okay, so when we look at these things, right, we know for sure that a big, strong person isn't the pinnacle of God's message, right? Because the rhinoceros doesn't have many messages to give you. It's a point of reference, and neither does the elephant or the hippo. Okay, a person is not healthier being a big kind of slow animal like that, right? And when arrows are being shot at you and so on and so forth, and you're trying to cut somebody with a sharp weapon or what have you, and some people use poisons, and so it doesn't pay to be a big, slow thinking person. So immediately, that's why some people believe that the lion, which isn't the case, mind you, is the king. Now, it's really more of the leopard and the falcon. So as we look at these animals and we look at the kind of way they have about them, the way they think, the way they move, there's a lot of evidence there. And the odds that this thing comes together like this and is a coincidence is too extreme, right? Because it's not just the odds of life existing in the first place, it's life existing with a very specific martial art lesson, okay? And so, we look at things like the deer and the antelope, and of course, if you really need more evidence to understand it, right, you go around the world and you see the different types of animals, and that's important too. I mean, it's important if you need that, right? But the most important thing for people to do is to rally and obey God through me, and learn through nature why they're supposed to obey God through me, and to do that in time. And after I'm gone, that can't be done, and everyone's just going to go to hell. And that has to do with rates of understanding, right? If you're a dog, for example, or a monkey, you're not going to understand in time, right? So you might argue, hey, I did nothing wrong, but you didn't make the cut, okay? And it's more clear cut than you might think. So even right now, I'm getting fumed and so on and so forth, because it's just their sheer jealousy. And we see animals in nature, like the Komodo dragon, the snake, they act like like some kind of sissy throwing a fit, And people don't understand that. And people don't understand why it's not a gay order. I mean, when you look at homosexuality or anyone, we'll start with anyone, to not break the rules on YouTube. We'll start with anyone having anal sex. If you have anal sex regularly, it's one thing to try it because you're mistaken. And, of course it's disgusting, but let's just get this over with. Okay. Then there's something wrong with you. Okay. In the movie Training Day, they brought up that this guy did something disgusting that had to do with his human feces, and they believed, the judge believed that he's crazy right away and said he's crazy. Boom. You see what I'm saying? Well, it is crazy to try to stick your dick in a butt regularly, okay, to be convinced that that's what you should do. So these people are mentally ill, okay? So when we see this homosexuality so pronounced in society, it's one of many markers of somebody who didn't kind of fully evolve, right? Their brain function wasn't kind of evolving to have mental clarity. And we see these arrogant kind of European royals, and people like that, people go to nice restaurants with suits on, and they're not persecuted because they're just arrogant fools. We know that they're just as sick as the homosexual, right? They could think that they're the straightest person ever lived, but because they're trying to use that kind of gay construct, they're basically encouraging and yoked to people who encourage people to have anal sex. Okay, again, even if you're straight, if you have anal sex regularly, okay, then you are mentally ill. Okay. Now some people say it's none of your business, right? And one might argue it's none of my business if you suck your kid's dick, right? Some people would argue that, right? That's his kid, not my kid, right? It's none of my business, if you turn out a chick and have her sucking your toes all day and she gets sick all the time. One could argue that's none of my business. But these are the facts. You see what I'm saying? And that's where we are now in history. And this is the end. Okay, so there's a bunch of mentally ill people everywhere who ignore the abundance of evidence that there's a martial art challenge. I mean, it's everything from poison oak to fruit on the trees. It has a specific design, and you know that, whites, Jews, and LGBT people spend a lot of time and money and killed and raped a lot of people trying to get them to make the extreme mistake of pretending that magically they're the ones that are chosen, and that they're the, the God race, and so on and so forth. And it's very sad and sick and despicable. I'm sure that a lot of people want to hear the truth about this, and they would agree that these things are important, and it's not the same as being racist. Remember, they changed my voice to try to make it so I sound whitish and gay and all kinds of stuff, because they try to make it, the white and Jewish and LGBT governing class seem ideal, and so they got everyone doing things a certain way, and they think that they're kind of beta oppressor, kind of silly, kind of fairy, kind of wig wearing theater arts, sexual power, if you want to call it that, is actually respectable. It's almost like they're making fun of themselves. I go as far as say they are, because when we look at a sexual experience, no one thinks that white, Jew, or LGBT people bring you the maximum sexual experience. And if it's not going to be natural, you may as well not even bother, right? Why draw the line there? Why not use a sex bot or whatever? So there's a lot of flaws in their thinking. They think that, they think kind of like a punk rocker in a suit, right? A heavy metal person in a suit mixed with like a skinhead. They're sexual sadists. They think that if they persecute me, that it works in their favor. But it is so damn stupid. Life is short, and they don't understand life. A true warrior is not going to give in to their nonsense. I'm going to keep going on strong, going to keep going strong, and what's going to happen is I'll be at God's right hand. I'm going to punish everyone who persecuted me. And even the Bible points out that their offspring and their loved ones are going to cook more because of their part in the evil that is occurring here in regards to them persecuting me, the Son of God, the top martial artist ever. Okay, so even the way I'm talking right now, it reflects their recent cognitive damage campaign, right? They want to cause me cognitive damage. And so this video is more than fair for so many reasons. And the fact that the most righteous person that ever lived is through sabotage, through their attempts to coerce me, drawing God's attention to this, if you will, in terms of me insisting on justice, right? That as my reward. The main thing I want is for all those who persecuted me, their offsprings, their loved ones in the afterlife, to suffer to the extreme forever. God is not going to overlook that, right? I passed the test. There's nothing they can do to cause me to fail the test, because they've hacked my brain, so to speak, by the cognitive damage, if for nothing else, to such a point that the die is cast. And so when I leave here, they'll have done their races, their countries, their families, their dead loved ones the greatest injustice possible. These are horrible, horrible human beings. No one's that much of a control freak. This is just them being pure evil, sexual sadists, complete trash, just completely out of touch with reality,